Hello, viewers of our Stop the Destruction of the World program. We are here to talk to you, as much as possible, about the trilogical science that was elaborated by the psychoanalyst Norberto Keppe, and to show you what Keppe discovered, and that the great cause of all this destruction that is taking place in the planet stems from the human being's interior, which is inconscientized, and the fact that the human being is still unconscious of his destructive attitudes and his inverted will. It's as if there were an anti-being in our interior, or a shadow, similar to what Jung talked about. But in the sense that we have a monster living within, ready to attack not only ourselves, our environment, our fellow men, and even life. So if this isn't conscientized in time, we are going to witness a calamity that has no precedence, as we are already witnessing. And this is the illness that is within our interior, and which we try to show on our programs and through our books in our conscientization campaign, so that things that have no solution stop happening in humanity. For example, take a look at this diagram. Every 5 minutes, a child dies of hunger. And when we think about this subject, we imagine, but what can we do about this? It's an economic problem. The problem is that humanity has more human beings than it can support. But it's not quite like that. Our society, our economy, our agriculture, including demographic density, and the number of children we have. All of this depends on our values and the choices we make. And behind our values and our choices is our psychopathology, our unknown interior, our aggressive, envious, and destructive tendencies. For example, take a look at what the poster says. 20% of the world's gross domestic product is lost due to global warming. So global warming is provoked by the human being's very neurotic conduct. In fact, by an economy called globalization, which in reality only benefits small groups with tremendous economic power, in detriment of the rest of the population, because free and non-polluting energy, which has been available for a long time on the planet, exists. But there are parallel interests involved of envy, arrogance, and power manipulating the situation. For example, take a look at the consequences of this. 200 million individuals will be obliged to migrate from their lands due to catastrophes, a mass exodus in modern history to escape the desert in Africa alone. And this is without counting the more developed peoples, such as the Swedish, who will soon see their habitats disappear on the coastal regions of Sweden due to the melting of the ice and the invasion of the sea. So this migration will be highly intensified in a short term. And all these issues are fundamental in our psychic lives, as mentioned in Keppe's books. Dr. Keppe?
I'm going to put up a sentence for you that shows something about the situation in the world today and how it can be solved. Take a look.
Faith is the direct knowledge of essence.
And what happens is that most science politicians, people in power, want to base themselves in what science says. So science is saying that the seas are rising, and all of these problems, etc., etc. But Until this rise is seen beyond any doubt, they say that it can't be confirmed by science as being exact. But once the seas have invaded the land and destroyed coastal cities, what use will this exact confirmation be?
Scientifically proven.
So, if this food here is eaten, a person can die. But first I have to see if the person really dies in order to confirm that. But after I have died from that food, what's the use of knowing this? Do you see? So, it's important to have faith. And what does faith say? Faith shows fundamental intuitive elements that the human being no longer has within his own interior. So he seeks wise people, seeks religious, spiritual issues to find out what's happening. And when one talks about theology, about a spiritual issue, it doesn't mean that it isn't linked to something within intelligence. What happens in relation to the issue of faith? It isn't that faith will supply something that the human being is no longer able to grasp, but rather, the faith that exists is a need because the human being has diminished his mental level. So the problem isn't that faith shows something that the human being has never reached. But faith came because now the human being, by his own doing, needs to have faith to believe in elements that he isn't able to reach any longer through his intelligence. So take a look at the diagram about what illness is.
What is illness? First, simply the opposition of goodness.
So, this is within each person's mind. Every person has an opposition to what is good. This is why we get sick, and why the world is in this disastrous situation. So, the issue of intuition, for example, is fundamental in order to know what the scientific truth is, which comes from thought and from revelation, because everything that the human being knows comes from revelation. And the next one.
Second, illness is an attitude that is against divine nature and against God.
So, the human being wants to be free. For what? As Immanuel Kant said, he wants freedom to say no to what is good. That is, it is said that the human being wants to be a god. Well, there's a mistake here, because only if he were the god of evil, wouldn't it? Like the one called Lucifer, because he obviously isn't God. So the human being wants to be a destroyer, because he doesn't want to follow the goodness that comes from the Creator. Let's see in third place.
The human being doesn't want to be what he is. This comes from his theomania and inversion. The human being wants to be the God of creation.
Therefore, imagine God the Creator can say, he wants to be a God, the word God in small letters, a little God of destruction. He doesn't want to be like God who constructs. He wants to be the opposite of the divine being. And this is why the human being is destroying the planet, his body, has illnesses, etc. Take a look at the etiology of neurosis based on our discoveries.
First, the cause of infirmities is due to an artificial conduct.
And secondly,
Etiologia is the denial, omission, and distortion of reality.
So illness was a choice that the human being made. When he decided that he didn't want divine goodness, didn't want paradise. This story of Adam and Eve being expelled from paradise, it isn't quite like that. They were not thrown out of paradise. They were the ones who put themselves out, do you see? It's more a symbolic image. So what would illness be then? Denial. That is, denial of what is good, denial of the truth and what is beautiful. Omission is to omit all of this. Distortion. And what is the distortion of reality? It is to distort the beauty of the world. So look, if the human being weren't like this, then the issue of slums and shanty towns, of horrible places in which to live, where there's a lack of hygiene, no sewer systems, all of this that the world still has, would be easily solved in a year or two, and the world would be another place. But for this to happen, the human being's interior would have to change. That is, he would have to become conscious that he wants to destroy the world. Take a look in third place.
There are 3 levels of illnesses: serious, which comes from theomania, medium, linked to envy, and simple neurotics related to rage or anger.
And these are self-explanatory. Now, I would like to put up another diagram to clarify this issue even further.
The human being lives within divine energy.
The explanation is this. You see the triangle here. The human being is in the middle. And this triangle, the human being, is bathed with goodness, the truth, and all that is aesthetic. And surrounding this is divine energy, isn't it? Which is reason and love. So you will see that the human being was created within this divine energetic in order to live what is divine. But what happened? He didn't accept it. And why not? Because he thought that he would get more pleasure living against this divine energetic. So, looking up here now, how? By being arrogant, envious, with rage and resentment, which surround the human being and this divine energetic. And so, the human being has sunk into this malignant, artificial energy, this anti-energy, we can say, this temporary energy. So the human being is surrounded by malignant energy, which doesn't only come from evil beings, but it's his own energy that has become malignant.
And of an inverted society that he created.
Exactly.
So, we'll be right back for the next segment.
Even if we don't have a lot of consciousness, we can perceive that life is divine. We live in transcendence, whether we accept it or not. We still live in an earthly paradise, except we don't accept it. In fact, we attack what is most beautiful, good, and real. Consciousness of our envy and inversion will make it possible for us to return to this paradise we've abandoned. We don't need to build it. We just need to accept it. The Stop the Destruction of the World Association was created to bring about exactly this consciousness. We are working to return the world to goodness. Join us. The most original contemporaneous writer in the world today, says the National Scientific Research Center in France. A genuine contributor to the intellectual treasury of civilization, says former U.S. Ambassador Joseph Kogassian. For these times of uncertainty and conflict comes a work of extraordinary vision, hope, and moral clarity. Brazilian psychoanalyst and social scientist Norberto Keppe writes with wisdom and authority about the things that really matter. How to heal illness, how inverted science is leading the destruction of nature, and what to do about it. Finding spirituality within, structuring a truly just society. There are more than 3,000 books published worldwide every day. None are more important than these. The books of Norberto Keppe. Trilogical science, leading us to a new world.
Quais os principais problemas que você vê na humanidade atual, no Brasil? Quais seriam as causas e o que você pode sugerir como...
Olha, eu acho que o maior problema que eu vi nesses 40 anos rodando o Brasil inteiro, conheço todos os estados do Brasil e uma boa parte do mundo, né, é a questão da solidariedade, né? Nós vivemos hoje num mundo muito egoísta, cada um querendo cuidar da sua carreira, do seu pedaço, do seu carro e tal, e é verdade que isso não está dando certo, né? Eu sonho e trabalho para isso em tudo que eu posso e nas coisas que eu escrevo, em que as pessoas sejam mais solidárias, né? Para a gente construir um mundo com mais paz, né? Porque nessa disputa individual de um querer ser melhor que o outro, ter mais do que o outro, nós vivemos num mundo em guerra, em várias guerras ao mesmo tempo, e algumas que a gente nem vê, né? Não é só guerra de tiro, né? de bombas, né? É a guerra do homem contra o homem, né? E isso não é legal. Eu sempre procurei, em todo lugar que eu trabalhei, convivi e tal, é ser mais solidário. Eu acho que esse é o caminho para a gente viver num mundo mais em paz. Que a gente fosse exatamente isso que eu te falei, mais solidário, né? Mais preocupado com o outro, né? Mas o poder, qualquer poder, eu imagino, qualquer governo e tal, ele muda muitas pessoas, né? E cada um quer ter mais poder, né? E eu fico me perguntando, para que tanto poder? Cada um quer ter no seu pequeno pedaço, né? As pessoas brigam por uma cadeira, uma mesa, uma sala melhor, um carro, sabe? Eu acho que não é isso. Quer dizer, eu acho que tem que aproveitar o poder para poder fazer alguma coisa pelos outros, né? Eu sei que isso é uma utopia, é um sonho, mas é disso que eu me alimento.
I would like to continue on this line that Kochko has just presented on our program, which in fact is very correct. The human being wants power to destroy, to impose his envy, his arrogance, and his megalomania, and his intention of destroying himself. I would like to remind you that many people say the following, but what can we do? Those who are guilty are those in power, the people who don't do anything. They have no power. And I would like to discuss an issue that is very different here now, that the people can and should do a lot in this sense. In what way? Generally, the people see those in power as semi-gods. They force us. We make a pact of destruction with those in power, accepting and giving value to everything that destroys us and is the most destructive for us. For example, take the issue of alcoholism. Brazil is in the third place in Latin America in terms of teenage drinking. Brazilian teenagers. 48% of Brazilian teenagers drink alcohol, a little less than Colombia and Uruguay in Latin America. And why does this happen? Because the human being has, as Dr. Kepi has mentioned, this intention of causing destruction, of opposing what is good and opposing consciousness. It's because of this pathology that we have and are unaware that the powerful take advantage of us. As they say, it's hunger together with the desire to eat. Power in a pact with the people to destroy life on the planet. Dr. Kepi?
Take a look at this sentence I'd like to put up.
A person who doesn't accept this life isn't going to accept the other one.
So what do I mean by this? For those of you who are watching us now on television, if, for example, you are sad, complaining, or are worried or anxious, desperate about something, or even on drugs or unhappy, it's because you are against life. Can you see that? If a person is in favor of life, he will be happy and he will be feeling well. So, each time a person is unhappy, is complaining about life, he is attacking his own life. And what does this show us? That in literature, more than 50% of the words shouldn't even exist. The human being should never say no. only to what is evil, of course. The human being should use more positive words, because negative words go against the human being, and they are typical of people who are more desperate and sick, enemies of life. That's why a person like this causes a bad feeling around him, because he has an energetic that's against life. If a person has a good energetic, he uses a more positive language. Take a look at an author here who said a lot of important things.
Roger Bacon.
I would like to show you what he said. Let's see.
Roger Bacon said in the 13th century that the first source of knowledge would be the authority that exercises faith.
And here he already commits a mistake. It's not that only authority has faith, because arguments about faith are normally authoritarian arguments. Of course, they are rational arguments that are impossible for man to grasp. They are revelations that are generally above the grasp of human ability. Take a look now in second place at what he said.
Following it is reason, which provides understanding and the truth.
So reason would be philosophy, which is also a form of revelation. One can never talk about philosophy without talking about theology. Every philosopher who talks about philosophy also talks about theology. Every theologian who talks about theology also talks about philosophy. With scientists, it's the same thing. Science doesn't exist without theology or philosophy. Let's see now, thirdly.
The third source of knowledge is science, that is based on external and internal senses.
Well, this is his idea, but science itself is to confirm or not what the person thinks, including elements that are not only philosophical, but even theological. Science can, by experimentation, see that many facts that theology explains are indeed real elements in life. Now, I would like to speak about work. What is work really? Take a look at this sentence.
Work is divine in itself, and it isn't this or that job.
What I want to say is that work in itself is an energy that moves mountains. And this is why a country like the United States placed action as the cause of truth. What did William James say, and those American thinkers, that the truth would be in action? Now, of course, they didn't take into consideration the recognition of good action, because if the individual does a bad action, commits a crime, a delinquency, then this isn't truth. So, action, in this case, is not truth. What I want to say is that action, mainly pure action, or any type of work, is as important as anything divine, because work in itself is divine in nature. You will notice that a country that progresses the most isn't the one that has more thinkers or more feelings. It's not a country that lives within emotions or creating philosophy. It's a country that is in action. Of course, in an action that is philosophically correct and theologically correct as well. Therefore, any type of action depends on the person who is doing the action. It's not that this type of action does good, or that type does what is bad. It's the person's intention. If he has a good intention, of doing something good, of dedicating himself to doing good action, then he is within the divine plan. Take a look at this other sentence now.
Theology is also knowledge.
This issue of theology is a revelation that exists in science and in philosophy. If a person has a good intention in his work, even if sometimes the work is something that doesn't have much importance socially, if he dedicates himself and puts his good intentions into practice, then it would be a divine work. And let's see now what the direction of humanity is.
Here in this diagram, you show human conduct in the sense of decline or development, but only 10% of human beings in contrast to the majority. You put here from 0 to 100 years, only 10% develop and 90% go into decline.
I'd like to show you a chart that shows fundamental rules for living well, feeling well. So if you should happen to apply this to your life right away, it would be very good for you.
3 rules for living well. First, not to desire more than you have.
And secondly,
Consider that you have more than is sufficient to live on. And third, apply all your efforts to helping your fellow men to reach your level. Note, the reason for the human being's unhappiness is because he does the contrary to all of this.
so these ideas were based in Thomas Kempis, who was a German theologian. I think he was a monk, and he wrote a famous book called The Imitation of Christ. So take a look at this photo. I would now like to put up the last sentence. Let's see what it is.
If a person isn't within goodness, then he is without God.
Only the person who is recognizing that he is happy, that he is within goodness, the truth, and beauty, and is practicing these, is with the Creator. If to the contrary, then he isn't. So the way to save the world is through this knowledge, so that people give up attacking what is good.
So, we'll see you next time to give continuation to our conscientization campaign. See you then.